You wake up at 6:47 a.m. to a phone that will not stop buzzing and a notification that makes your brain refuse to process what your eyes are reading. You read the number 4 times and each time your brain insists it must be a glitch because numbers that size do not belong to people like you. You open 3 different platforms, check 2 separate accounts, and every single one shows the same impossible thing: verified, confirmed, and undeniably yours. You turn on the news and every channel on earth is running the same red breaking banner: global gold markets have gone completely dark. Social media, news sites, financial feeds, every screen you open is showing the same word in capital letters: collapse. At 7:23 a.m. your phone rings from a number with no name, no country code, and a voice on the other end that sounds like it has never once been ignored. You hang up the call, sit on the floor of your apartment, and for 60 seconds you simply exist inside the truth that every ounce of gold on earth now belongs to you. By 9 a.m. 3 governments have publicly acknowledged the crisis, gold prices have ceased to exist as a concept, and you still haven't told a single person what your screen is showing. You wake on day 2 to 91 missed calls, 14 official emails with government seals, and 1 message that begins with the words, "On behalf of the International Monetary Fund." Gold spot price, the number that has anchored global finance for centuries, flickers, spikes to 10 times its value, then simply stops updating because the systems cannot process a market with one owner. A sitting head of state, a person who commands armies and signs laws, calls you directly and opens the conversation by asking how you prefer to be addressed. Within 2 hours you have spoken with representatives from 4 central banks, a sovereign wealth fund, and a man who introduces himself only as an interested party. On the afternoon news you watch footage of people lining up outside jewelry stores and banks, trying to cash in or cash out anything gold adjacent before the situation changes. You scroll through your contacts and realize there is no one you can call, not because you don't trust them, but because no conversation in human history has ever needed to start with what you would have to say. A financial analyst you have never met appears on television and explains your probable psychology, your likely next move, and your presumed political allegiance, all of it completely wrong. Late on day 2 an anonymous message arrives through an encrypted channel warning you that certain groups are already moving to resolve the situation outside of legal frameworks. You lock the door, close the blinds, and sit in the dark understanding that by doing nothing you are making the most powerful decision on earth. On day 3 morning a tech executive contacts you to explain that gold is not just jewelry, it is inside every processor, every satellite, every medical device on earth. He tells you that without new gold entering the supply chain, global electronics manufacturing begins shutting down within 96 hours, starting with semiconductors, ending with hospitals. A news segment shows a jeweler in 3 different countries boarding up shop windows because there is no gold to sell and no price to sell it at. You realize that every hour you sit with this, someone somewhere is making a decision based on a supply that technically no longer exists, and that is a form of harm you are now responsible for. By day 3 afternoon you are fielding simultaneous pressure from a central bank, a tech supply chain emergency team, 3 NGOs requesting humanitarian access, and a journalist who somehow has your number. You turn every device face down, sit at the table with a glass of water, and give yourself 10 minutes to think like a person instead of a crisis. Gold is currency, gold is technology, gold is jewelry, gold is war finance, gold is the thing nations have killed each other over for 5,000 years, and right now it is all yours. By the end of day 3 you have not released a single gram, and the silence you are keeping is louder than anything any of those governments have said. Day 4 begins with a joint press statement from 6 nations announcing coordinated sanctions against you, a private individual, effective in 48 hours if you do not comply. The same morning brings 4 separate acquisition offers, each one large enough to fund a small country for a generation, and each one structured so that you would quietly disappear from the conversation afterward. A security briefing delivered in person by 2 people who will not show identification informs you that your address, your daily routine, and your biometric data are now in the hands of at least 3 non-state actors. That night you sit with something you have not felt since childhood, the particular fear that comes not from what has happened but from what could, and the knowledge that you invited it. You call back the government representative, keep them on hold for 4 minutes, and when you finally speak you tell them you will make your decision on your timeline, not theirs. Within 3 hours of that call a second round of sanctions is announced, 2 stock markets voluntarily halt gold-related trading, and your face appears on the front page of every major newspaper on earth. A message arrives from an independent economist at an international research institution, not a government, not a corporation, proposing something no one else has suggested, using the gold to fix something that has been broken for decades. For the first time since day one you read something that makes you feel like a person with a choice rather than a problem waiting to be solved. You go to sleep on day 4 without answering a single offer, accepting a single meeting, or releasing a single gram, and in the silence, something is becoming clear. By day 5 the global economy has not collapsed. It has reorganized itself around your silence in ways that reveal exactly who benefits from the current system and who does not. Nations with gold-backed reserves are leveraging your absence from the market to consolidate power, while nations without them are quietly beginning to fracture along economic fault lines that already existed. A doctor in a country you have never visited sends you a message through a humanitarian organization explaining that 3 surgical procedures scheduled this week cannot proceed because the gold-plated instruments cannot be replaced. You authorize the release of a precisely calculated amount of gold, enough for medical supply chains globally, not enough to trigger a market event, and send it through the humanitarian channels before anyone can negotiate around it. The medical release triggers 3 simultaneous responses: applause from humanitarian organizations, fury from governments who weren't consulted, and a gold speculation spike from traders who saw it as a signal. You understand now what no one told you at the start. At this scale, every action has 10 consequences and none of them are the one you intended. A message arrives from the hospital, 3 words: the surgery's happened. And for a moment the weight of everything else disappears into the size of that sentence. You spend the last hours of day 5 alone at your desk, not taking calls, not reading offers, writing, for the first time, a list of what you actually believe should happen to the world's gold. Every financial news channel wakes up on day 6 with a countdown clock on screen, 24 hours remaining, and the question they keep asking is what you will do when it ends. You read back what you wrote last night and realize it is not a list of financial decisions. It is a statement of what you believe the world owes the people it has always taken from. A joint coalition delivers a final legal ultimatum: either transfer all gold to a multilateral international body by midnight, or face immediate coordinated asset seizure and criminal referral. You decide that the question was never what to do with the gold. The question was always whether you would use the moment to repair something or simply survive it. You spend the next 6 hours making authorized transfers, not to governments, not to corporations, to independent humanitarian infrastructure, debt relief mechanisms, and medical foundations across 4 continents. By evening financial analysts are tracking anomalous gold flows to non-governmental organizations and the consensus on every network is the same: no one predicted this. You stop at midnight and sit with the city outside your window, and for the first time in 6 days you're not anxious, not watching your phone, just present in a decision you are certain of. 3 hours into day 6 night a consortium of private gold interests files emergency injunctions in 4 jurisdictions attempting to freeze all non-governmental transfers before the 7-day window closes. You were told this would happen, you prepared for this, and the legal structures you quietly put in place over the past 18 hours mean the injunctions have nothing to attach to. You wake on day 7 before sunrise and the first thing you feel is not fear or excitement but the particular calm of someone who has already done the hardest thing. Every financial channel, every news network, every social media feed is running a live countdown to the end of your 7-day ownership. And none of them know what you have already done. At 9 a.m. you complete the last authorized transfer and close the portfolio interface for the last time. The work is finished and what you chose to do with it is already in motion. You walk outside for the first time in 7 days and the city is exactly as you left it: loud, indifferent, and entirely unaware of who is walking through it. At exactly 11:59 p.m. the asset control mechanism expires and in financial markets around the world gold begins trading again, chaotic, then adjusting, then slowly, something new. In the weeks that follow, humanitarian organizations begin reporting unexplained operational expansions, 3 national debt structures are quietly restructured, and medical supply chains resume in 11 countries. Economists call it an anomaly, governments call it a precedent, conspiracy theorists call it a coordinated operation, and every version of the story is missing the part where it was just one person at a kitchen table making a list. You sit at your desk 3 months later, brokering small digital transactions, drinking the same coffee, living the same quiet life, and you never once feel the need to tell anyone. Because the point was never for the world to know your name. The point was for the world to be slightly better, and you to be exactly the person you decided to be when no one was watching.